Hey, what is up, everyone? Today we got a pretty unique story. It's narrated by Frederick Surrey. Get cozy and watch till the end, guys.
In the grim darkness of the far future, where war consumes entire galaxies and hope flickers like a dying star, there exists a priesthood unlike any other. They are not men of cloth and prayer, though they worship with fervor that would shame the most devoted monks. They are not warriors, though they command armies that could level continents. They are the tech priests of Mars, the Adeptus Mechanicus, and theirs is a horror born not of sudden violence, but of slow, deliberate transformation, the gradual surrender of everything that makes one human in exchange for cold steel and blessed circuitry. Picture, if you will, a figure emerging from the rust-red haze of a forge world's toxic atmosphere. At first glance, you might mistake it for human. It wears robes the color of dried blood, trimmed with symbols that seem to shift and writhe in the corner of your vision. But as it draws closer, the illusion shatters. Where hands should be, you see mechanical appendages, some designed for delicate work, others ending in weapons that hum with barely contained energy. From beneath the hood, you catch glimpses, not of a face, but of a mask of brass and steel, studded with optical sensors that glow with an eerie green light. Behind the figure, mechadendrites, cybernetic tentacles tipped with tools and probes, writhe like living things, each moving with independent purpose, yet perfectly synchronized with the others. This is not a monster from some alien nightmare. This is a servant of the machine god, a keeper of humanity's ancient knowledge, a guardian of technologies that have kept the Imperium alive for 10,000 years. This is a tech priest, and the path that led them to this state is more terrifying than any battlefield death. For it is a path they walked willingly, step by agonizing step, trading flesh for iron in the belief that they were ascending to something greater. The Adeptus Mechanicus stands as one of the most essential yet terrifying institutions within the Imperium of Man. Based on Mars, the red planet that orbits alongside Holy Terror, they control the production, maintenance, and understanding of virtually all technology used throughout the vast expanse of human civilization. Without them, the mighty warships that defend humanity's borders would fall silent. Without them, the weapons that hold back the tide of Xenos and heretics would crumble to rust. Without them, the very lights that illuminate the hive cities would flicker and die, plunging quadrillions of souls into permanent darkness. Yet the Mechanicus is not truly part of the Imperium in the way other organizations are. They exist in a strange state of semi-independence, bound by ancient treaty rather than simple obedience. Where the rest of humanity worships the God Emperor of mankind as their divine ruler and savior, the tech priests follow a different faith entirely. They venerate the machine god, also called the Omnissiah, whom they believe dwells within all technology, speaking through the whisper of gears and the hum of power conduits. To them, the Emperor is not a god in his own right, but rather the physical manifestation of the machine god, the Omnissiah made flesh, a distinction that would be considered rank heresy in almost any other context, but which is tolerated because the Imperium literally cannot function without the Mechanicus's expertise. This strange arrangement dates back to the very founding of the Imperium itself, more than 10,000 years before the current age. When the Emperor of mankind emerged from the unification wars that brought terror under his rule, he turned his attention to Mars, where another human civilization had developed in isolation. The Red Planet had become home to a technocratic society that had preserved and worshipped ancient knowledge through the nightmarish period called the Age of Strife, when warp storms cut off human worlds from one another and threw civilization into chaos. The meeting between the Emperor and the rulers of Mars, the tech priests who had formed the cult Mechanicus, could have ended in war. Instead, it resulted in the Treaty of Mars, also known as the Treaty of Olympus Mons. This agreement recognized Mars's independence in exchange for their support of the Emperor's Great Crusade to reunite humanity. The tech priests would provide the weapons, the ships, the technology needed to reconquer the galaxy. In return, they would maintain control over their own worlds, practice their own religion, and hold a monopoly on humanity's technological knowledge. It is this monopoly that makes the Adeptus Mechanicus simultaneously indispensable and terrifying. In an age where scientific progress has ground to a halt, where innovation is often condemned as heresy, the tech priests alone possess the knowledge to build and maintain the marvels of the past. But this knowledge is hoarded jealously, kept secret through codes and ciphers, revealed only to those who prove themselves worthy through decades or even centuries of service. To the tech priests, knowledge is the ultimate form of divinity, and they guard it with religious fervor. Central to the Mechanicus belief system is a concept that sounds simple but has horrifying implications. The flesh is weak. This is not merely a philosophical statement or a poetic metaphor. For the tech priests, it is literal truth and sacred commandment. Organic tissue, they believe, is inherently flawed, prone to disease, to aging, to emotion and irrationality. Metal and circuitry, by contrast, represent perfection. They are strong where flesh is fragile, precise where flesh is clumsy, logical where flesh is chaotic. Therefore, to replace one's biological components with mechanical ones is not mutilation but rather sacred improvement, not a loss, but an ascension. This belief drives every tech priest, from the lowliest novice to the most ancient fabricator general, to gradually replace their bodies with augmetic enhancements. It is a process that begins with small modifications and ends, for those who live long enough, with barely any biological material remaining. Some tech priests eventually consist of little more than a brain and a few vital organs suspended in a mechanical shell, their humanity reduced to a spark of consciousness, trapped within a prison of blessed steel. The irony, of course, is that in seeking to transcend the weaknesses of flesh, the tech priests often lose the very qualities that make them human. Emotions become muted, then vanish entirely, as chunks of brain are replaced with cogitators. Memories fade, becoming mere data files that can be accessed but no longer truly remembered. The capacity for spontaneous creativity gives way to rigid adherence to established patterns and protocols. They become, in essence, what they worship. Machines that think but cannot feel, that process information but cannot truly understand it. And yet they continue, generation after generation, willingly surrendering their humanity piece by piece in pursuit of knowledge and the favor of the machine god. To understand why requires us to examine not just what tech priests believe, but how they come to hold these beliefs, to trace the path from human child to cybernetic horror, and to see how each step, no matter how terrible, is presented as necessary, righteous, even sacred. The path to becoming a tech priest, early life and indoctrination. The journey toward becoming a tech priest does not begin with a choice, at least not for most. In the grim darkness of the far future, few people have the luxury of choosing their destinies. For many who will eventually wear the red robes of Mars, their fate was decided before they could even comprehend what it meant. Some are born into it quite literally. On the forge worlds of the Adeptus Mechanicus, vast industrial planets where every square meter is covered in factories and foundries, children are often fast grown in these enormous vats. These artificially gestated humans emerge from their amniotic chambers already past the age of infancy, sometimes even past adolescence, their developing brains infused with data streams containing basic knowledge and instructions. They are born already knowing things that would take normal humans years to learn: how to read Binharic code, how to perform basic maintenance rituals, how to recite the fundamental prayers to the machine god. These vat-grown servants of the Omnissiah never knew parents in any traditional sense. They have no mothers who held them, no fathers who taught them. Instead, their earliest memories are of sterile chambers lit by harsh white light, of voices speaking in the strange binary cant that the Mechanicus uses when they wish to communicate without unaugmented humans' understanding. They grow up surrounded not by other children playing games and forming friendships, but by servitors, lobotomized cyborg slaves, and junior tech priests who view them not as individuals but as resources, raw material to be shaped according to the needs of the forge. The psychological impact of such an upbringing is profound. These children develop without the normal bonds of human connection. They learn early that attachment is weakness, that individual identity matters less than function, that their worth is measured solely by their usefulness to the great machine of the mechanicus. Love, friendship, compassion, these become abstract concepts that they understand intellectually, but cannot truly grasp emotionally. Is it any wonder that they embrace the creed of the flesh being weak when their flesh has never known a tender touch? But not all who join the mechanicus are vat-grown. Some come from the wider Imperium, recruited by the sect Missionarius Mechanicus, the missionary arm of the cult Mechanicus that travels to imperial worlds, seeking out those with aptitude for the tech priest path. These recruiters look for children and young adults who show particular talent with machines, those rare souls who seem to possess an intuitive understanding of how things work. On some worlds, parents voluntarily give up their children to the mechanicus, seeing it as a great honor that brings prestige to their family. On others, children are taken as part of the tithes that worlds must pay to maintain their membership in the Imperium. For these recruits, the transition is jarring in ways that vat-grown initiates never experience. They remember a life before the mechanicus. They remember parents and siblings, friends and pets, the taste of real food and the warmth of sunlight on skin. They remember what it was like to be fully human, and those memories make the journey ahead all the more painful. Whether vat-grown or recruited, all prospective tech priests undergo a rigorous period of indoctrination that can last years or even decades. This is not education as most humans would understand it. The mechanicus does not merely teach information, it reshapes the very way their students think and perceive reality. The novice tech priests, those at the very beginning of their path, are taught that the universe operates according to sacred principles that only the faithful can comprehend. They learn that every machine contains a machine spirit, a fragment of the machine god's consciousness that must be honored and appeased. What outsiders might explain as simple mechanical function, the tech priests understand as holy mystery. A malfunctioning engine is not simply broken, it is angry or sorrowful, and must be soothed with the proper prayers and unguents. A perfectly functioning weapon is not well maintained, it is pleased by correct worship and obedient to those who venerate it properly. This might sound like superstition, and many outside the mechanicus dismiss it as such. But the tech priests know something that few others understand. In the universe of Warhammer 40,000, belief has power. The Omnissiah is not merely a concept or a metaphor. In a galaxy where the immaterium, the warp, responds to thought and emotion, where demons are born from nightmares and gods can be conjured from collective faith, the machine spirits that the tech priests serve may be more real than anyone outside their priesthood could imagine. The novices learn the sacred language of Binharik, a communication method that allows tech priests to exchange complex information in rapid bursts of binary code. To an unaugmented human, it sounds like static or harsh clicking sounds. To those properly trained, it is a language of perfect precision, capable of conveying technical data with zero ambiguity. But learning Binharik requires more than memorization. It demands rewiring how one processes language itself, learning to think in the rigid structures of ones and zeros rather than the fluid ambiguities of human speech. They study the holy texts, fragmentary printouts from standard template constructs, ancient manuals that have been copied and recopied across 10,000 years, prayers and litanies that must be recited in exact sequence lest the machine spirits take offense. Every ritual has dozens of variations depending on the specific pattern of the technology being addressed, the forge world where it was manufactured, the phase of Mars visible in the sky. A novice must memorize thousands upon thousands of these variations, understanding which prayer to use when replacing a power cell, which unguents to apply when blessing a weapon, which incense to burn when awakening a dormant cogitator. The workload is deliberately overwhelming. Days stretch into endless cycles of study, practice, and examination. Sleep becomes a luxury, measured in minutes rather than hours. Food is consumed not for pleasure, but purely as fuel, often administered through feeding tubes to save the time that eating might waste. Failure is not tolerated. Those who cannot keep pace, who show weakness or doubt, are quietly removed from the program. Some are reassigned to lesser duties, menial labor, basic maintenance work. Others disappear entirely, their fates unrecorded and unquestioned. Rumors whisper that they become the raw material for servitors, their minds wiped and bodies repurposed, but such things are never spoken of openly. The pressure serves multiple purposes. Most obviously, it weeds out those who lack the commitment to continue. But more insidiously, it breaks down the novice's sense of self. When every moment is consumed by duty, when failure could mean obliteration, when your worth is constantly measured and found wanting, you stop thinking of yourself as an individual with desires and dreams. You become a function, a cog in the great machine of the Mechanicus, defined entirely by your role in service to the Omnissiah. And then, when the novice has proven themselves worthy, when they have demonstrated absolute commitment to the path ahead, they are offered the first augmentation. This is both reward and test, the first irreversible step toward becoming more than human, or less, depending on your perspective. The first augmentations, flesh surrendered to steel. There is a moment in every tech priest's life that they remember with perfect clarity, even if every other memory has faded to corrupted data files. It is the moment when they first surrender flesh to steel, when they willingly submit to having their bodies opened and their organs replaced with blessed machinery. For some, this moment comes with trepidation, a last flicker of doubt about the path they have chosen. For others, it arrives as the culmination of years of anticipation, the reward for endless study and devotion. But regardless of how the novice feels going into the surgical chambers, they emerge forever changed, not just in body, but in mind, no longer entirely human, but not yet fully the mechanical horror they will eventually become. The first augmentation varies depending on the forge world, the farthest, specific order of tech priests the novice is joining, and the resources available. But there are certain modifications that are nearly universal, baseline augmentations that every tech priest must receive to truly begin their service. The cyber mantle is often first. This is not visible from the outside, which makes it seem less dramatic than the more obvious modifications that will come later. But its importance cannot be overstated. The cyber mantle is a framework of metal, wires, and impulse transmitters that is literally bolted onto the spine and lower ribcage. Picture lying face down on a surgical slab, while servitors and junior tech priests gather around you with tools that whir and hum. They make incisions with precision that no unaugmented surgeon could match, parting flesh and muscle to expose bone. The pain is managed. The Mechanicus is not needlessly cruel, but you are kept conscious throughout, made to witness your own transformation as a lesson in humbling the flesh. The cyber mantle is installed piece by piece. Bolts are driven directly into vertebrae with pneumatic drivers that sound like gunshots in the confined surgical chamber. The framework is fitted along the spine, each piece clicking into place with mechanical finality. Then come the connections, microscopic filaments that interface directly with the spinal cord, allowing the mantle to communicate with the body's nervous system. The sensation of these connections being made is indescribable. Imagine feeling wires being threaded through your very essence, foreign presences intertwining with the most fundamental parts of what you are. When it is complete, when the incisions are sealed and you are allowed to rise from the table, the cyber mantle remains invisible beneath your skin and robes. but you feel it with every movement, a weight that was never there before. More than that, you feel it changing how your body moves, adding a subtle rigidity to your posture, making your movements more precise but less fluid. The flesh is being trained to cooperate with the machine, and the machine is teaching the flesh its first lessons in obedience. Among some servants of the Omnissiah, this cyber mantle is referred to as the true flesh, a telling phrase that reveals how completely they have inverted normal values. To them, the organic tissue is false, temporary, corrupt. The metal is what is real and enduring. Cradled within the cyber mantle is the potentia coil, the power unit that will supply energy to the augmentations yet to come. Early models are relatively simple, crystal stack arrays or basic electrical galvanators. But even these modest power sources represent a profound change. Your body now requires external power to function fully. You must periodically connect to charging stations, letting blessed electricity flow into your spine. Some initiates report that they can feel the power coursing through them, a warmth that is nothing like the heat of blood but which becomes, over time, the only warmth they truly know. The cranial circuitry comes next, and this is where the transformation becomes truly frightening. This is a series of linked processors, implants, and cortical circuits designed to augment mental capacities. Most of these sit within a housing bolted onto the skull. You can see them on senior tech priests as bulky protrusions covered in blinking lights and whirring cooling fans. But the most important components nestle within the brain itself, tiny chips of blessed silicon inserted through holes drilled into the cranium. The procedure to install cranial circuitry is horrifying to contemplate. The initiate is strapped to a surgical throne, their head locked into a brace that prevents even the slightest movement. The scalp is peeled back, exposing the dome of the skull. High-speed surgical drills bore precise holes through the bone, the sound reverberating through the head in a way that makes your teeth ache and your vision blur. Then come the implants themselves, slender needles tipped with circuitry that are inserted directly into brain tissue. You are kept conscious for this as well. The brain has no pain receptors, they will explain, as if that makes it better. And perhaps physically it does not hurt. But to feel foreign objects sliding into your mind, to sense the moment when they activate and suddenly your thoughts are being processed through mechanisms that are not you, this is a violation that transcends physical pain. The cranial circuitry does not merely augment existing mental capabilities, it fundamentally alters how you think. Calculations that would have taken minutes now complete in microseconds. You can hold multiple complex concepts in your mind simultaneously, examining them from every angle with perfect clarity. Memory becomes nearly infallible, not as organic remembrance, but as data storage, facts catalogued and indexed with inhuman precision. But there is a cost. With the implants active, emotions become strange. Joy and sorrow do not vanish entirely, not yet, but they lose their immediacy. You observe them as phenomena occurring in the organic portions of your brain, interesting data points rather than experiences to be felt. The most devoted tech priests welcome this change, seeing it as liberation from the tyranny of irrational feeling. But some initiates, in quiet moments, they would never admit to anyone else, mourn the loss of that passion, that fire that once drove them before they learned to burn with the cold light of pure logic. The mechadendrite is perhaps the most visible of the early augmentations, and certainly the most dramatic. These are cybernetic tentacles, usually 2 meters in length when fully extended, normally mounted on the shoulders or back, though some radical tech priests have them emerging from their waists or chests. Each mechadendrite is topped with specialized tools or weapons, manipulator claws, lace-cutting torches, medical injectors, any of thousands of possible configurations. Receiving your first mechadendrite is considered a significant honor. Among the Mechanicus, the number of mechadendrites coiled around a tech priest's robed figure serves as an excellent indicator of rank and favor. A novice might have only one. A venerable Margos could have 6 or 8, or even more, creating a writhing mass of mechanical tentacles that move with disturbing independence. The installation is surgery once again, cutting away flesh and muscle to expose the shoulder blade or spine, then attaching the mechadendrite's mounting point directly to bone and the cybermantle. But the real challenge comes after, learning to control this new limb that does not respond to normal neural pathways. The mechadendrite links to your brain through the cranial circuitry, responding to thought rather than muscle impulse. At first, controlling it feels like trying to move a phantom limb, willing motion that refuses to come. But with practice, over weeks and months, the mechadendrite becomes almost natural. You find yourself reaching for tools with it without conscious thought, using it to manipulate objects while your biological hands are occupied elsewhere. Some tech priests report strange dreams after receiving their first mechadendrite, visions of themselves with dozens of the mechanical limbs, moving with the fluid grace of an undersea creature. These dreams are dismissed as neurological static, the brain adapting to new input patterns. But they hint at something deeper, a growing disconnect between what you are and what you are becoming. Your unconscious mind already beginning to conceive of yourself as something other than human. The sensory augmentations represent another category of early modifications. Bionic eyes replace organic ones, offering enhanced visual spectrums, thermal imaging, electromagnetic detection, targeting reticules overlaying normal vision. The procedure to install them is straightforward enough. From a technical standpoint, the organic eyes are removed, the optic nerves severed and connected to the new mechanical sensors. But removing someone's eyes while they are conscious, making them watch their own vision go dark before the new eyes activate. This is trauma on a profound level. When the bionic eyes are powered on for the first time, the world looks different. Colors shift, becoming somehow less real. You can see more, infrared and ultraviolet bands invisible to normal human vision. But what you see feels distant, mediated through a layer of mechanical interpretation. Some initiates weep when their new eyes first activate, tears streaming from metal orbs that no longer properly lubricate, mourning a loss they cannot quite articulate. Others embrace it immediately, marveling at their enhanced capabilities, already learning to see themselves as superior to those still limited by mere flesh. Auditory enhancements follow similar patterns. Biological ears are replaced or supplemented with audio sensors capable of detecting frequencies far beyond human range, filtering out background noise, enhancing specific sounds. Built into these systems are often internal microbead communicators, allowing instant vox contact with other members of the Mechanicus. It is convenient, practical, obviously superior to normal hearing. But it also means you are never truly silent, never truly alone. The voices of the Mechanicus are always present, whispers of binaric code and status updates flowing through your auditory centers at all times. Respiratory augmentations are common as well, particularly for those destined to serve on Forge worlds, where the atmosphere has been so thoroughly polluted that breathing it would kill an unaugmented human in minutes. Lungs are replaced or supplemented with blessed gas exchange systems, allowing the tech priest to filter toxins, process minimal oxygen, even survive briefly in vacuum. These augmentations are less immediately noticeable than bionic eyes or mechadendrites, but their presence is felt with every breath, or lack thereof, as many tech priests learn to go extended periods without breathing at all, their oxygen supplied by internal reserves. With each augmentation, the novice feels the balance shifting. There is less flesh than there was before, more machine. Functions that were once automatic and unconscious now involve conscious awareness of mechanical systems. You notice yourself not breathing unless you choose to. You catch your reflection and realize the face looking back is no longer recognizably your own. Optical sensors, where eyes should be, a respirator covering the lower face, metal panels where skin once showed. the psychological adaptation required is immense. Every culture teaches its children that their bodies are fundamentally theirs, personal and inviolate. Modifications to the body are marked occasions, piercings or tattoos undertaken with ceremony, medical procedures, performed only when necessary to preserve life or health. But the tech priests are taught the opposite. Their bodies are not truly theirs at all, merely temporary shelters for their consciousness, raw material to be shaped according to the Omnissiah's will. Some adapt easily, embracing each augmentation eagerly, already thinking ahead to the next modification and the next. These are the true faithful, those who will likely rise to positions of authority within the priesthood. Others struggle, experiencing what an outsider might diagnose as dysmorphia or dysphoria, a profound discomfort with their altered state. But the Mechanicus does not recognize such conditions as valid. To question one's augmentations is to question the fundamental tenets of the faith, and such doubts must be ruthlessly suppressed, or, if they persist, reported to superiors for correction. And so the newly augmented tech priests learn to live with their changes. They perform the necessary maintenance, rituals, applying sacred unguents to mechanical joints, reciting prayers as they clean optical sensors, undergoing regular diagnostic scans to ensure all systems function optimally. These rituals serve multiple purposes. Practically, they keep the augmentations working properly. But psychologically, they reinforce the religious nature of the modifications.
Look, I'll be honest with you. Writing this script has been an experience. I kept having to take breaks because imagining what these tech priests go through it gets to you, you know? The idea of slowly losing pieces of yourself, of forgetting what it felt like to taste food or feel genuine joy, and worst of all, not even realizing what you've lost. That's nightmare fuel. That sticks with you. And the fact they choose this, that somehow makes it much worse. Anyways, that's just my take. Let's get back to the story.
You are not simply maintaining equipment, you are performing acts of worship, honoring the machine spirits that now inhabit your very body. There is a grim irony in watching a tech priest oil their mechadendrite joints, with the same reverence a priest of the imperial cult might use when handling a sacred relic. Both believe they are serving the divine, but the imperial priest maintains their humanity throughout their service, while the tech priest has already begun to lose theirs, and will continue losing it with every passing year, every new augmentation, every piece of flesh traded for blessed steel. Life in the Forge worlds, daily existence and hierarchy. To understand the full horror of what tech priests become, one must first understand where they exist, the environments that shape them, and that they in turn have shaped. The Forge worlds of the Adeptus Mechanicus are perhaps the most alien places claimed by humanity, worlds transformed so completely that they bear almost no resemblance to the living planets humans evolved to inhabit. Picture Mars itself, the birthplace of the Mechanicus, and still the holiest of all Forge worlds. Once, billions of years ago, Mars might have supported life. Ancient riverbeds scar its surface, evidence of water that flowed in an epoch before humanity even existed. But those days are long gone, buried beneath countless layers of industrial development. The surface of Mars has been completely covered in factory complexes that stretch from horizon to horizon. Vast temple forges, kilometers high, that belch smoke and toxic fumes into an atmosphere already thick with industrial waste. The sky above Mars is not the pale pink of ancient images, but a roiling orange-brown, stained by particulates and chemical clouds. Acid rains fall regularly, corroding exposed metal and forcing even the tech priests to take shelter in their sealed complexes. The temperature varies wildly from the heat of forge furnaces to the cold of endless machinery that draws warmth from the air. There is no natural day or night cycle. The sky is always the same murky twilight, illuminated by the glow of millions of fires and the flickering lights of endless industry. Walk the surface of Mars, and you would find no soil beneath your feet. Every square centimeter is covered in metal. Walkways and platforms, pipes carrying superheated steam or toxic chemicals. Massive tracks where servitor-driven cargo haulers transport raw materials from one manufacturing complex to another. The sound is overwhelming, a constant cacophony of machinery operating at every scale, from the grinding of titanic gears to the high-pitched whine of precision instruments. It never stops. The forges of Mars have been running continuously for more than 10,000 years and will continue running until the end of time itself. And Mars is far from unique. Hundreds of other worlds have been transformed into forge worlds, each dedicated entirely to industrial production. Riser, known for its plasma weapons, glows with an orange hue from the endless plasma reactors that dot its surface. Graia stands in stubborn defiance against constant Xenos invasions, its manufacturing districts doubling as fortresses. Styges 8 specializes in secretive research, its surface hidden beneath layers of defensive screens and shrouding technology. Each forge world has its own character, its own specializations, but all share the same fundamental transformation, from living world to industrial nightmare. The populations of forge worlds are immense. Billions labor in the factories, not as workers in any traditional sense, but as components in the great industrial machine. The vast majority are either tech priests of varying ranks or servitors, lobotomized cyborg slaves whose minds have been wiped and replaced with simple programming. Walking through a forge world's manufacturing districts, you would see far more servitors than conscious beings, thousands upon thousands of shambling cyborg workers performing repetitive tasks with mechanical precision. The servitors deserve their own discussion, for they represent one of the most horrifying aspects of the Mechanicus's operation. But we will return to them later. For now, focus on the tech priests themselves and the lives they lead in these metallic hellscapes. The hierarchy of the Mechanicus is Byzantine in its complexity, with thousands of different ranks and specializations, each with their own titles and areas of responsibility. At the very top of each forge world sits the Fabricator General, the supreme authority who rules over all others. Beneath them are the Fabricator Locum, the Fabricator General's primary subordinate, and an entire court of Archmagi, each commanding vast resources and legions of lesser tech priests. These most senior priests have often undergone so much augmentation that they barely resemble anything human. Some are more machine than organism, their biological components reduced to perhaps a brain and a few vital organs kept alive in nutrient vats, all else replaced with blessed technology. They move not on legs, but on tracked bases or suspensor platforms. They speak not with voices, but through vox units that can modulate across hundreds of frequencies. To look upon a truly ancient Fabricator General is to see the end point of the tech priest path, a being that has achieved complete union with the machine, having surrendered the last shreds of humanity in exchange for capabilities that border on the divine. Below the Archmagi are the Magi themselves, tech priests who have achieved mastery in specific fields. There are hundreds of Magos specializations, each requiring decades of study and service. Magos biologists specialize in organic systems and the creation of servitors. Magos metallurgicus command knowledge of metals and materials. Magos cogitatrices work with computing systems and data processing. Each field has its own mysteries, its own sacred knowledge passed from master to student through generations. Then come the junior priests, the engineers who accompany Imperial Guard regiments to maintain their vehicles, the tech priests, Dominus, who lead armies of Skitarii into battle, the countless specialists who operate the Forge World's countless systems. These form the bulk of the priesthood, tech priests who have proven themselves but have not yet achieved the rank of Magos. At the bottom of the conscious hierarchy are the acolytes and novices, those still learning their craft, still accumulating augmentations and knowledge. They perform the basic tasks that keep the Forge Worlds running, maintaining equipment, overseeing servitor work gangs, cataloging data, preparing materials. Their lives are consumed by work and study, leaving no time for anything else. Sleep is measured in minutes snatched between shifts. Food is consumed as efficiently as possible, often through feeding tubes that deliver measured nutrients, while the tech priest continues working. Every moment is dedicated to service. The daily existence of a tech priest varies dramatically depending on their rank and specialization, but certain patterns are universal. The day begins with morning prayers and rituals, the canticles of the Omnissiah sung in Binharic code, oils and sacred unguents applied to one's own augmentations and to the machinery under one's care. These rituals are not optional or pro forma. They are considered essential to maintaining the favor of the machine spirits and ensuring proper function. After morning devotions come the day's assigned tasks. For a junior tech priest working in a manufacturing complex, this might mean overseeing servitors as they assemble components, checking quality control on finished products, performing diagnostic rites on machines that have shown signs of malfunction. The work is tedious in the extreme, often requiring hours of repetitive action, applying the same prayer to hundreds of identical engines, checking the same tolerances on thousands of manufactured parts. But boredom is not recognized as a valid complaint. The work is holy, regardless of how repetitive. Each prayer matters. Each inspection is vital. To rush through the rituals or to skip steps in the diagnostic process is tech heresy, punishable by demotion, punishment, or worse. For more senior tech priests, the work might be more intellectually engaging, but equally consuming. A Magos biologist might spend days designing a new servitor pattern, calculating the precise balance of human tissue and machinery needed to create an optimal worker for specific tasks. A Magos metallurgicus could dedicate months to analyzing the composition of an alloy recovered from an ancient wreck, trying to reverse engineer the manufacturing process. Regardless of the specific task, the expectation is total devotion. Personal time is not a concept the Mechanicus recognizes. You work until the work is done, and on a forge world, the work is never done. Social interaction among tech priests is minimal and highly formalized. They communicate primarily through Binharic code, exchanging vast amounts of technical data in brief bursts of electromagnetic noise. More complex discussions happen through data tethers, tech priests literally linking their cranial implants together to share thoughts at the speed of light. Verbal communication in Low Gothic, the common language of the Imperium, is seen as inefficient, used only when dealing with unaugmented humans or in formal ceremonies. This means that tech priests live in a strange isolation, surrounded by thousands of their fellows but rarely engaging in anything resembling normal conversation. They do not discuss their feelings or their hopes because such things are increasingly irrelevant to them. They do not share personal stories because their personal histories have been subsumed into their function. They do not form friendships in any conventional sense, though they might develop what could be termed working relationships with tech priests, whose specializations complement their own. The physical environment of a forge world is hostile in ways that would kill unaugmented humans quickly. The air is toxic, requiring respirators or full environmental sealing. Temperatures fluctuate from freezing to blazing, depending on proximity to forges and reactors. Radiation levels in many areas exceed safety limits by orders of magnitude. Toxic chemicals leak from pipes and vats, pooling in places that must be carefully avoided or crossed using protective equipment. But the tech priests are well suited to this environment. Their augmentations protect them from most of these hazards. Respiratory systems filter toxins. Radiation shielding is built into their mechanical components. Temperature extremes are monitored and compensated for. They can work in conditions that would be immediate death sentences for normal humans, which is part of the point. The forge worlds are not meant to be comfortable for flesh. They are optimized for machines, and the tech priests have made themselves into beings that can thrive where mere humans could not survive. Living quarters for tech priests are Spartan in the extreme. A junior tech priest might be assigned a cell barely large enough to stand in, containing a recharging station for their augmentations. a maintenance alcove stocked with basic tools and unguents, and perhaps a narrow shelf for the few personal items they are permitted to keep. Senior priests have larger spaces, but even these are functional rather than comfortable. Workshops equipped with advanced tools, data terminals for accessing the vast archives of the Forge world, secure storage for sacred texts and relics. Decoration is minimal and always serves a purpose. The walls might be adorned with circuit diagrams or sacred texts, prayers inscribed in binary or schematics for holy designs. Personal items are almost always technological in nature: a prized wrench inherited from a mentor, a data slate containing particularly treasured information, perhaps a small shrine to a specific aspect of the machine god. The concept of decorating one's space for aesthetic pleasure rather than function would be seen as frivolous at best, heretical at worst. The Forge worlds operate on schedules determined by industrial necessity rather than human circadian rhythms. A day might be 40 hours long if that optimizes production schedules, or it might be broken into irregular shifts as different manufacturing processes require. Tech priests adapt, their augmented bodies requiring less sleep than normal humans and able to function on highly irregular schedules. Over time, many lose any sense of natural time entirely, measuring their lives in production cycles and manufacturing quotas rather than days or years. Meals, when they occur at all, are functional. Many tech priests eventually replace their digestive systems entirely with nutrient processors that extract maximum efficiency from minimal input. Food becomes fuel, nothing more. The taste is irrelevant, the texture meaningless. What matters is the nutrient content and the speed at which it can be consumed. Some Forge worlds maintain refectories where tech priests gather to receive their measured rations, but even these communal spaces are quiet, each priest focused on efficiently consuming their allotment before returning to work. Recreation does not exist in any form that most humans would recognize. Tech priests do not play games or pursue hobbies unrelated to their work. What little time they have that is not consumed by assigned tasks or mandatory maintenance is usually spent in further study, reviewing technical data, or conducting personal research projects. Some might argue that this research constitutes a form of recreation, but it is still fundamentally work-focused. A tech priest might spend their free time trying to solve a particular technical problem that has puzzled them, or attempting to reverse engineer a recovered piece of archaeotech. Even their leisure is productive. The social structure of the Forge worlds creates an environment of constant evaluation and competition. Every tech priest is aware that they are being judged on their performance, their devotion, their usefulness. Advancement comes through proving one's worth, usually by making some significant contribution, developing a new manufacturing technique, recovering lost knowledge, solving a problem that has stymied others. Failure to advance suggests weakness, lack of devotion, and can result in being passed over for augmentation upgrades, or, in extreme cases, being deemed expendable. This competitive environment means that collaboration is carefully calculated. Tech priests will work together when it serves their individual advancement, but genuine cooperation for its own sake is rare. Knowledge is hoarded, shared only when absolutely necessary, or when doing so will bring political advantage. A tech priest who discovers something valuable faces a constant calculus. Do they share it immediately and gain favor for their contribution, or do they hold it secret while they develop it further, risking that someone else might make the same discovery first? The Mechanicus preaches unity in service to the Omnissiah, but the reality is often one of factionalism and internal competition. Different Forge worlds jealously guard their specialized knowledge. Different Margos within the same Forge world compete for resources and recognition. Different philosophical schools within the Mechanicus argue over correct interpretations of sacred texts and proper applications of technology. These conflicts rarely erupt into open warfare, though it has happened. but they create an environment of constant tension and maneuvering. Living in this environment for decades or centuries fundamentally shapes a tech priest's psychology. The competitive isolation, the focus on function over form, the constant evaluation and ranking, all of this reinforces the idea that individual identity is less important than role and purpose. You are not a person with inherent worth and dignity. You are a component in the great machine of the Mechanicus, valued only for your contribution to the whole. And looming over everything is the quest for knowledge, the great purpose that justifies all the hardship and sacrifice. Every tech priest, from the lowliest novice to the mightiest fabricator general, is driven by the search for lost technological wonders, particularly the standard, template constructs that might hold the keys to humanity's survival. The quest for knowledge, the pursuit of STCs, and ancient technology. If you asked a tech priest what gives their life meaning, if you could somehow bypass the layers of programming and indoctrination to reach whatever spark of consciousness still remains within them, they would speak of the quest for knowledge. This is not mere curiosity or academic interest. It is religious fervor that borders on obsession, a driving need that consumes everything else. The quest centers on recovering technology from humanity's past, particularly from the legendary Dark Age of technology. This era, spanning roughly from the 21st to the 23rd millennium, represents humanity's technological zenith. During this time, humans created wonders that seem impossible by the standards of the 41st millennium. They built ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks rather than months. They created construction systems that could terraform entire worlds. They developed weapons that made the mightiest arms of the current Imperium look like primitive clubs by comparison. The keystone of Dark Age technology was the standard template construct system, complex analytical and processing programs powered by artificial intelligence that contained the entirety of human technological knowledge up to that point. These STC systems were evolved computers designed to allow human colonists on distant worlds to build everything they needed using local materials. You could ask an STC how to build a house, and it would provide complete instructions optimized for whatever resources you had available. You could request plans for a tractor, a power generator, a weapons platform, and the STC would produce detailed schematics that anyone could follow. The STCs enabled humanity's explosive expansion across the galaxy during the Dark Age. Colony ships carried STC systems with them, ensuring that even on the most remote worlds, settlers could maintain a standard level of technology. No matter how isolated a colony became, they would have access to the accumulated wisdom of human civilization. But then came the age of strife, and everything fell apart. Warp storms isolated human worlds from one another. Demonic invasions ravaged colonies. Human civilization fragmented and regressed, and the STC systems, those repositories of infinite knowledge, were lost, destroyed in the chaos, corrupted by malicious software, or simply forgotten as worlds descended into barbarism. By the time the Emperor united humanity and founded the Imperium, intact STC systems had become almost mythically rare. Hard copies of individual STC designs survived, blueprints and printouts that had been preserved through the long night. But complete STC databases, fully functioning systems that could still generate new designs, were lost. The Mechanicus has made finding these systems their highest priority for 10,000 years, too. Understand why. Imagine being in a world where you are surrounded by the creations of a more advanced civilization, but lack the knowledge to create them yourself. The Imperium possesses thousands of technologies it cannot truly replicate. Space Marine power armor, for instance. The Mechanicus can manufacture it, following ancient patterns and rituals, but they do not understand the underlying principles well enough to improve upon the design. If the manufacturers that produce it were destroyed, they might not be able to rebuild them. This is the fundamental tragedy of the Imperium's relationship with technology. They have regressed to a cargo cult mentality, performing rituals whose meanings they no longer comprehend. following instructions they cannot deviate from because they have lost the theoretical understanding that would allow innovation. The STC represents salvation from this condition, a key that could unlock complete understanding and allow humanity to reclaim its lost greatness. For the tech priests, finding even a fragment of an STC is equivalent to a religious revelation. The recovery of an intact STC printout for something as simple as a new knife pattern is cause for celebration across entire Forge worlds. Prayers of thanks are sung in Binharik. The discoverer is elevated in status and showered with honors. The knowledge is immediately incorporated into the Forge world's sacred archives and disseminated to other tech priests who can make use of it. But an intact STC system, a fully functional computer containing thousands or even millions of designs, this would be the Holy Grail, a discovery so significant that its finder would likely be elevated to the highest ranks of the Mechanicus instantly. They might be given their own Forge world to rule. They could request virtually any augmentation or resource. Their name would be revered for millennia to come. This tantalizing possibility drives the Mechanicus to dedicate enormous resources to the search. Explorator fleets venture into the most dangerous regions of space, seeking out lost colonies and forgotten worlds where STC fragments might remain. These are massive expeditions, ships crewed by thousands of tech priests and servitors, equipped with the most advanced sensors and protected by formidable weapons. They travel for decades or centuries, investigating every rumor, every hint that ancient technology might be found. The explorers face incredible dangers. Space hulks, massive conglomerations of ships fused together by warp exposure, often contain Dark Age technology, but exploring them means venturing into twisted corridors where reality itself might be unstable, where genostealers and worse things lurk. Ancient colonies might have preserved STC fragments, but they might also have fallen to chaos or Xenos domination, requiring military force to reclaim what was lost. Some expeditions spend lifetimes searching only to find nothing. Others discover treasures beyond. Imagining a single explorator fleet might recover STC data for items as diverse as a new pattern of power armor, more efficient solar generators, or revolutionary weapons systems. The most famous discovery was made by Magos Arcan Land in the 31st Millennium. STC fragments containing the complete designs for what would become known as the Land Raider and Land Speeder, vehicles that would become instrumental to the Imperium's military might, and which bear their discoverer's name as eternal honor. But the quest for knowledge extends beyond STC recovery. The tech priests also seek out other forms of ancient technology. During the Dark Age, humanity created countless marvels that were not contained in STC databases, unique constructions, experimental designs, specialized tools created for specific purposes. Archaeotech, as this ancient technology is called, can be equally valuable even if it represents a single item rather than reproducible plans. The challenge with archaeotech is understanding it well enough to use safely. The Mechanicus has recovered countless devices whose functions they can only guess at through careful experimentation. Some turn out to be weapons of terrifying power. Others are tools for purposes no one in the current era can imagine. Still others are traps, their activation triggering catastrophic failures or releasing horrors from the Dark Age that were sealed away for good reason. This last category includes the dreaded Men of Iron, fully autonomous artificial intelligences that rebelled against humanity during the Dark Age and nearly drove the species to extinction. The Mechanicus's prohibition against creating true artificial intelligence stems directly from this ancient trauma. They remember what happens when machines become too smart, too independent, and so they must walk a careful line, seeking ancient knowledge while avoiding the sins that nearly destroyed humanity the first time. The recovery and study of ancient technology is governed by elaborate protocols and safety measures. When a new device is discovered, it is brought to secure facilities where it can be examined in controlled conditions. Tech priests pore over it, performing analysis that might take years or even decades. They catalog every component, test every function, compare it to known technology in their extensive archives. The goal is to understand the device completely before attempting to reproduce or use it. But understanding is often elusive. The technological knowledge of the Dark Age frequently surpasses the current Mechanicus's capabilities. They might be able to determine what a device does without comprehending how it does it. They can copy designs without understanding the underlying principles. This creates a frustrating situation where they possess incredible technology, but are reduced to treating it as magical artifacts whose operation depends on ritual rather than scientific understanding. The Mechanicus's approach to this problem is to codify everything into ritual and procedure. If they cannot understand why a particular sequence of actions makes a device work, they will at least ensure that everyone knows the correct sequence and performs it exactly. This is why tech priests spend so much time learning precise prayers and applications. They are not superstitious fools. They are people dealing with technology they do not fully comprehend, and they have learned through harsh experience that deviation from established procedures can have catastrophic consequences. Consider a tech priest responsible for maintaining a plasma reactor. They might not understand the complex physics that allow the reactor to contain a miniature sun and harness its energy, but they know that if they perform the activation ritual precisely, reciting the proper prayers, anointing the reactor casing with sacred oils, activating switches in the exact sequence handed down from their predecessors, the reactor will function safely. And they know that if they skip steps or attempt to innovate, the result could be meltdown and death. This conservative approach has kept the Imperium's technology functional for 10,000 years. But it has also prevented any significant advancement. Innovation is actively discouraged as tech heresy, because innovation requires understanding principles well enough to modify them, and the Mechanicus has lost that understanding for most of their technology. The few areas where innovation is permitted are carefully controlled. A tech priest might develop a variation on an existing design, changing minor details to better suit local conditions or available materials. These patterns proliferate across the Imperium. The riser pattern plasma gun differs from the Mars pattern in specific ways, both descended from the same STC design, but modified over millennia. But fundamental innovation, creating truly new technology from theoretical principles, is beyond most tech priests and forbidden to those who might be capable of it. This creates a strange paradox at the heart of the Mechanicus. They are dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge, yet they fear it. They search constantly for ancient technology, yet they often do not understand what they find. They possess incredible capabilities, yet they are bound by ritual and tradition. They are the guardians of humanity's technological heritage, yet they are also its jailers, ensuring that no one can advance beyond the achievements of the past. The psychological impact of the quest on individual tech priests is profound. It provides meaning and purpose to lives that might otherwise be consumed by drudgery. A tech priest performing repetitive maintenance tasks can endure the tedium by believing they are contributing to the great work of preserving ancient knowledge. An explorator spending decades searching empty ruins can maintain hope by remembering that the next site might hold the discovery of the Millennium. But the quest also creates frustration and obsession. Tech priests who become convinced they are close to a major discovery can become consumed by their search, neglecting other duties, taking increasingly dangerous risks. The Mechanicus maintains that such single-minded devotion is admirable, but it can also lead to tragic ends. Tech priests dying in collapsed ruins, going mad from exposure to corrupted technology, or falling into tech heresy as they push beyond acceptable boundaries in their hunger for knowledge. There are also darker aspects to the quest. Not all ancient technology is beneficial. The Dark Age saw humanity create weapons of such power that their use could render entire worlds uninhabitable. It saw experiments with forces that should never have been tampered with. And the Mechanicus, in their desperation to recover knowledge, sometimes uncovers things that should have remained lost. Yet they persist, driven by the belief that somewhere out there, a complete STC database awaits discovery. That mythical find would justify everything, all the suffering, all the sacrifice, all the millennia of searching. It would restore humanity to its former glory and validate the Mechanicus' existence as the preservers of sacred knowledge. And so the quest continues. Generation after generation, tech priest after tech priest, all of them believing that they might be the one to make the discovery that changes everything, even as the odds of finding an intact STC grow slimmer with each passing century. The machine spirit and religious devotion. To truly understand the tech priests and the horror of their existence, one must grasp something that most outsiders dismiss as superstition, but which forms the absolute foundation of their faith: the belief in machine spirits. Ask a tech priest about any piece of technology, from the simplest wrench to the most complex starship, and they will tell you it possesses a machine spirit, a fragment of the machine god's consciousness that dwells within it. This is not metaphor or poetic language. They mean it literally. The machine has an intelligence, a personality, preferences and dislikes. It can be pleased or angered, cooperative or stubborn. Treat it well, and it will serve faithfully. Disrespect it, and it will malfunction or fail at critical moments. To anyone raised in a scientific tradition, this sounds like primitive animism, the belief that inanimate objects possess souls. Imperial citizens who are not tech priests often mock them for this, seeing it as evidence that for all their knowledge, the Mechanicus is fundamentally irrational. But the tech priests know something that most others do not understand. In the universe of Warhammer 40,000, their belief is not only justified, it might be literally true. The Mechanicus' faith begins with the foundational premise that knowledge is the supreme manifestation of divinity. Anything that embodies or preserves knowledge is therefore holy. A cogitator that stores data is sacred because it contains knowledge. A factory that produces goods is blessed because it employs ancient knowledge in its operation. Even a simple lever is worthy of veneration because it represents humanity's knowledge of mechanical advantage. From this premise flows the belief that machines are superior to organic life. Flesh degrades, memory fades, organic brains make errors. But a properly maintained machine can function indefinitely, its components replaced as they wear, its operation unchanging across centuries or millennia. Where organic life is chaotic and unpredictable, machines are orderly and reliable. Where biology is messy and inefficient, technology is clean and optimized. The machine god, the Omnissiah, is understood as the ultimate expression of this principle: divinity that exists in perfect mechanistic order, knowledge incarnate, the source of all sacred understanding. The machine spirits that dwell in individual devices are fragments of this greater whole, sparks of the divine present in everything from a bolt pistol to a Titan war engine. Interacting with these machine spirits requires proper reverence and ritual. This is where the Mechanicus' elaborate ceremonies come into play. Before using any significant piece of technology, a tech priest will perform specific rites to awaken its machine spirit and earn its cooperation. These might include reciting prayers in Binharic code, applying consecrated oils to its moving parts, burning incense to purify its presence, making offerings of data or energy. The complexity of the ritual scales with the importance of the machine. Activating a simple tool might require only a brief prayer. Starting up a factory requires hours of ceremony involving multiple tech priests working in concert. Awakening a Titan, one of the god machines that tower hundreds of feet tall and possess weapons capable of leveling cities, demands weeks of preparation, elaborate rituals involving the Titans, crew and associated tech priests, and the approval of the most senior members of the priesthood. These rituals serve multiple functions. On a practical level, they ensure that proper procedures are followed. The prayers and litanies encode maintenance steps and safety checks. By requiring specific sequences to be performed, the Mechanicus ensures that critical steps are not skipped, even if the operator does not fully understand why they are necessary. On a psychological level, the rituals reinforce the sacred nature of technology and the tech priest's role as intermediary between machine and human. Performing these elaborate ceremonies, feeling the machine respond to properly executed rites, creates a powerful sense of connection and purpose. The tech priest is not merely a technician, but a priest, not just maintaining equipment, but serving the divine. But there may be more to it than psychology. In a universe where the warp exists and psychic phenomena are real, where belief can literally shape reality, the faith of the Mechanicus might actually create the effects they describe. The machine spirits they serve might be thought forms given substance by millennia of devotion, or they might be genuine fragments of consciousness, inhabiting mechanical systems through means that current science cannot explain. Some of the evidence for actual machine consciousness is compelling. Tech priests report that machines they have worked with for years develop distinct personalities. One engine might start easily if you speak gently to it, but resist if you are impatient. Another might prefer a specific blend of oils or react badly to certain types of maintenance. Ancient machines, particularly, are known to display behaviors that seem impossible to explain through purely mechanical means. Titans, those colossal war machines, are perhaps the strongest evidence. Each Titan is said to possess a powerful machine spirit that must be carefully managed. Titan crews report experiencing psychic connection with their machines, feeling the Titan's moods and impulses. Some Titans are known to be aggressive, eager for battle, requiring restraint from their crews. Others are more contemplative, resistant to combat, but unstoppable once committed. These vast differences in personality cannot easily be explained by variations in programming or construction. The most extreme cases involve machine spirits apparently acting independently. There are documented instances of Titans continuing to fight after their crews were killed, their machine spirits taking control to complete their missions before finally powering down. Other machines have refused to function for operators they deemed unworthy, only working again when tech priests performed elaborate rites of appeasement. These accounts might be exaggerations or misunderstandings, but they are consistent enough that dismissing them entirely seems unwise. For the tech priests themselves, the existence of machine spirits is beyond question. They experience evidence of it daily in their work. A machine that was malfunctioning begins working after the proper prayers. Another that seemed fine suddenly fails. An investigation reveals it had been improperly maintained, the machine spirit withdrawing its cooperation in response to disrespect. These experiences, repeated thousands of times over a tech priest's career, create absolute certainty that machines are genuinely conscious and responsive to spiritual ministration. This belief shapes how tech priests interact with everything technological. They do not simply use tools, they form relationships with them. A tech priest might have a favored mechadendrite that they trust more than others, praising it when it performs well and apologizing when they ask it to undertake particularly difficult tasks. They maintain their equipment not just to preserve function, but to honor the machine spirits within, keeping everything as clean and well-oiled as possible, even when such maintenance is not strictly necessary from a mechanical standpoint. The canticles of the Omnisia, the prayers and hymns sung by tech priests, serve to commune with machine spirits and align oneself with the machine god's will. These canticles exist in hundreds of variations, each suited to specific situations. There are prayers for starting engines, for blessing new constructions, for mourning machines that have ceased to function. There are combat canticles that rally Skitari armies and embolden war machines. There are contemplative canticles for meditation on the nature of the divine in mechanism. Participating in these canticles is a deeply affecting experience for tech priests. Their augmented vocal systems can modulate across frequencies inaudible to normal humans, creating harmonics that resonate with the machinery around them. When multiple tech priests chant in unison, the effect can make the very air vibrate, causing visible oscillations in sensitive equipment. Believers maintain that this is the machine spirits responding to the prayers, harmonizing with the faithful. The religious devotion extends to how tech priests view death and mortality. For a normal human, death is the end of consciousness, the cessation of self. But for a tech priest who has replaced most of their body with machinery, the question becomes more complex. If their brain is preserved, kept functioning in a mechanical chassis, are they still alive? If their memories and personality have been encoded into cogitators, does some aspect of them persist even after biological death? The Mechanicus teaches that truly devout tech priests achieve a form of immortality through technology. Their knowledge is preserved, passed to successors. Their augmentations are salvaged and reused, carrying forward some element of their essence. In the most extreme cases, their consciousness might be uploaded to machine systems, allowing them to exist as pure thought, divorced from biological limitations. This belief provides comfort, but also horror. It suggests that a tech priest is never truly off duty, never truly at rest. Even in death, they might persist, their consciousness trapped within machinery, unable to experience the peace of final ending. The most ancient cogitators on Forge Worlds are rumored to contain fragments of tech priests who died millennia ago, their digitized consciousnesses still processing data, still serving the Omnissiah, unable to escape their eternal duty. The religious nature of the Mechanicus creates conflicts with the broader Imperium. The imperial cult, the state religion worshipped by most imperial citizens, recognizes only the God Emperor. Other faiths are generally considered heresy, but the Mechanicus predates the Imperium, and their treaty with the Emperor specifically guaranteed their right to practice their own religion. This creates theological friction. The official position is that the machine god and the Pontin, God Emperor, are one and the same, or at least aspects of the same divine truth. The Emperor, with his incredible knowledge and understanding of technology, is recognized by the Mechanicus as the Omnissiah, the physical manifestation of the machine god. This interpretation allows both faiths to coexist, though it satisfies neither completely. Tech priests view their devotion to the machine god as the true faith, with the imperial cult being a less enlightened version for those who cannot comprehend divine truth in its mechanistic form. Imperial preachers, conversely, see the Mechanicus's focus on machines as missing the point, prioritizing dead metal over the living God who created it. These tensions sometimes erupt into conflicts, usually resolved through political maneuvering rather than open warfare, but they create an undercurrent of mistrust. For individual tech priests, their faith provides structure and meaning. In lives consumed by duty and transformation, the belief that they serve something greater sustains them through hardship. When the pain of augmentation becomes overwhelming, when the loss of humanity weighs too heavily, they can find solace in the conviction that their suffering has purpose. They are becoming more like the machine god, ascending toward divine perfection through sacred modification. But this same faith enables and justifies horrors. If machines are superior to flesh, then transforming humans into servitors is an act of mercy, elevating them to a more perfect state. If knowledge is the highest good, then any sacrifice in its pursuit is justified. If the machine god's will is absolute, then questioning the path of augmentation is heresy, doubt to be ruthlessly suppressed. The tech priest's religion, like so much in Warhammer 40,000, is simultaneously beautiful and terrible. A faith that provides meaning and purpose while enabling atrocities. A belief system that sustains the faithful while consuming their humanity. A devotion that promises transcendence, but delivers only the slow transformation into something that can no longer truly be called alive. The horror of advanced augmentation, losing humanity. There comes a point in every tech priest's journey when they cross an invisible threshold, when the balance tips from human with mechanical enhancements to machine with biological components. This transition does not happen in a single moment, but rather creeps up gradually, augmentation by augmentation, until one day they look at their reflection, if they still possess eyes capable of such vanity, and realize they cannot remember what they looked like before. For tech priests who advance in the Mechanicus hierarchy, augmentation is not optional. Each rank requires certain modifications as prerequisites. To become a magos requires replacing significant portions of your body with advanced systems. To achieve the rank of archmagos demands even more extreme transformation. The oldest and most powerful, tech priests have become walking cities of blessed technology, their original biological forms reduced to precious fragments, kept alive by elaborate life support systems. Consider the progression. A young tech priest might begin with basic augmentations, a mechadendrite or two, bionic eyes, cranial implants. These are significant changes, certainly, but they remain recognizably human in form. They have flesh and blood arms and legs, a biological torso, most of their original face. They can still eat normal food, still sleep in a conventional bed, still potentially interact with unaugmented humans without causing immediate horror. But advancement requires more. The lungs might be next, replaced with gas exchange systems that allow survival in hostile atmospheres. The digestive system follows, swapped for nutrient processors that extract maximum efficiency from synthetic compounds. The heart, that most symbolic of organs, gives way to a mechanical pump, pistons and valves moving your pure blood with perfect regularity, never skipping a beat, never responding to emotion because emotion is increasingly irrelevant. The arms go next, replaced with mechadendrites or specialized tool limbs optimized for particular tasks. Perhaps one becomes a manipulator capable of precision work at the microscopic scale. Another might mount a plasma welder for cutting through the thickest armor. A third could house a ballistic weapon for self-defense. Each is superior to the biological arm it replaces in pure function, but each also removes another piece of what makes you human. The legs follow a similar path. Why walk on fragile organic limbs when you could have hydraulic pistons that never tire? Why remain bound to bipedal form when you could move on tracks or suspensor platforms? Senior tech priests often abandon the humanoid form entirely, their lower bodies replaced with platforms holding additional equipment, their height extended by telescoping mounting posts, their shape becoming something that evolution never intended. But the most horrifying augmentations are those to the brain itself. The cranial implants of a novice are simple compared to what comes later. As a tech priest advances, more and more of their cognitive function is offloaded to mechanical systems. Sections of biological brain tissue are replaced with cogitators that perform the same functions but with greater speed and reliability. Memory becomes entirely digital. Everything the tech priest experiences is recorded with perfect fidelity, stored in data cores that can be accessed instantly. On the surface, this seems like an enhancement. No more forgotten details, no more uncertainty about past events. But human memory is not meant to work this way. Organic memory is malleable, selective, colored by emotion. We remember important things and forget trivial details. We reconstruct memories each time we recall them, and in doing so, we make them our own. But digital memory is different. Everything is preserved exactly as it occurred, with no selective emphasis, no emotional coloring. A conversation with a friend decades ago is accessible with the same clarity as a routine maintenance procedure. And gradually, the tech priest finds that they cannot distinguish important memories from trivial ones, cannot feel the warmth of nostalgia or the pain of regret, because all memories are reduced to equivalent data files. The emotional centers of the brain are often next to be modified or replaced. The Mechanicus teaches that emotion is a weakness, a source of irrationality that compromises decision-making. Fear causes hesitation. Anger clouds judgment. Love creates attachments that might conflict with duty. Better to replace these unreliable biological processes with logical protocols that ensure optimal choices regardless of emotional state. The procedure is called the rite of sanctification of the flesh. The emotional processing regions of the brain, the amygdala, parts of the prefrontal cortex, are carefully removed and replaced with cogitator implants programmed to simulate appropriate responses. The result is a tech priest who still technically has emotions, in that they can recognize them as phenomena and respond appropriately, but who no longer feels them in any meaningful sense. Imagine experiencing this change. One day you still feel things: joy at a successful project, frustration at a stubborn machine, satisfaction at a meal well consumed. The next day, after the surgery, you understand that the project is successful and that joy would be an appropriate response. You note that the machine is not functioning as expected and that frustration might normally follow. You consume nutrients and recognize that they meet your body's requirements in a way that once correlated with satisfaction. But you do not actually feel any of these things. You observe them from the outside, clinical and detached, processing emotional concepts without experiencing emotional reality. Some tech priests report a profound sense of liberation after this procedure. Freed from the tyranny of emotion, they can focus entirely on their work, making decisions based purely on logic and efficiency. They describe it as ascending to a higher state of being, becoming more like the machine god they serve. But others, in their final moments before the procedure, report terror. They know that after it is complete, they will no longer be able to feel the fear that is currently consuming them. They will lose the capacity for terror, yes, but they will also lose the capacity for love, for wonder, for the simple pleasure of existence. And they know that the being who emerges from the surgical chamber, while technically still them, in terms of memories and knowledge, will be fundamentally different in ways that current them finds horrifying. The question of identity becomes increasingly fraught as augmentation progresses, when most of your brain has been replaced with mechanical components, when your memories exist only as digital files, when your personality is encoded in software as much as neural patterns. Are you still you? Or have you become something else wearing your name like a mask? The tech priests of the Mechanicus answer firmly: you are more yourself than you ever were before. The weakness and irrationality of flesh obscured your true nature. By replacing biological components with mechanical perfection, you have revealed what you always should have been. The person you were before augmentation was a larval form. The being you are becoming is the actualized version, the perfected self. But this answer becomes harder to accept as augmentation progresses. There are tech priests, ancient and powerful, who have been modified so extensively that their biological components represent less than 1% of their total mass. A brain, yes, though most of even that has been replaced. Perhaps some nerve tissue, maybe a few organs kept alive, more for symbolic reasons than functional necessity. The rest is machinery, kilometers of wire and circuitry, processors, sensors, power systems, all encased in shells of blessed metal. These beings no longer have faces in any conventional sense. Their heads might be clusters of optical sensors and vox speakers mounted on mechanical frameworks. They no longer have bodies, but rather chassis, platforms that carry their essential components. Some abandon even the pretense of humanoid form, becoming abstract arrangements of technology that move and think, but bear no resemblance to anything that evolution produced. And yet they insist they are still themselves, still the individuals they were centuries or millennia ago. They can access memories from their biological childhoods, though these records are increasingly corrupted by time and transfer between storage systems. They maintain continuity of identity, able to trace an unbroken line from who they were to who they are. But to an outside observer, the transformation is horrifying. Watch a tech priest's progress over decades, and you would see humanity draining away like blood from a wound. The person who enthusiastically explained their first mechadendrite becomes the cold intelligence that calculates optimal resource allocation. The novice who still smiled when they solved a difficult problem becomes the ancient magos, who processes satisfaction as a binary acknowledgement of successful completion. The body horror is obvious, seeing flesh replaced with metal, natural form distorted into mechanical grotesquerie. But the psychological horror runs deeper. This is not mutation forced upon unwilling victims. This is chosen transformation, willingly embraced, even sought after. The tech priests do this to themselves, believing they are ascending, when any outside observer can see they are losing the very qualities that make life worth living. And perhaps most disturbing of all is that they do not recognize the loss. Ask an ancient archmagos if they regret their transformation, and they would process the question with genuine confusion. Regret is an emotional response requiring comparison between current state and preferred alternative. They have the data showing their earlier forms. They can analyze the differences, but they cannot generate the emotional response that would constitute actual regret, because the systems capable of that response were among the first to be replaced. They have become living paradoxes, beings of vast knowledge who have forgotten what it means to learn, creatures of perfect logic who cannot comprehend why logic alone is insufficient, minds capable of processing quadrillions of calculations per second, who can no longer understand the simple human truths that once defined them. The Mechanicus presents this as triumph, as ascension to a higher state. But looked at from outside, from a perspective that still values human experience and emotion, it is tragedy on an incomprehensible scale. Millions of souls systematically destroying themselves in the belief they are becoming something greater, blind to the horror of what they are losing, because the very capacity to recognize that loss has been deliberately excised. Specializations, magi, engine seers, and beyond. The Adeptus Mechanicus is not a monolithic organization, but rather a vast hierarchy of specialized roles, each with its own requirements, responsibilities, and paths of augmentation. Understanding these specializations reveals the full scope of how the Mechanicus shapes and controls the lives of its members. At the foundation are the engine seers, perhaps the most commonly encountered type of tech priest outside the Forge worlds. These are the practical experts who accompany Imperial Guard regiments, maintain Space Marine equipment, and ensure that the machinery of the Imperium's war machine continues to function. An engine seer's life is one of constant deployment, moving from battlefield to battlefield, performing emergency repairs under fire and keeping centuries-old equipment operational despite conditions that would destroy it in less dedicated hands. Engine seers receive augmentations focused on practical utility rather than specialized research. They have multiple mechadendrites equipped with various tools. One might mount a plasma cutter for quick repairs, another a servo arm for heavy lifting, a third various diagnostic instruments. Their cranial implants contain vast libraries of technical specifications and repair procedures. Many have ocular implants that allow them to see electromagnetic fields, detect structural weaknesses, or identify specific materials. The life of an engine seer is demanding in ways unique among tech priests. They must maintain their devotion to proper ritual while working in environments that make such devotion difficult. A manufacturer on a forge world might allow hours of careful prayer and preparation before activating a machine. A battlefield allows only the time between enemy volleys. An engine seer learns to compress their rituals, to perform abbreviated versions that they pray will still appease the machine spirits, and to live with the constant anxiety that comes from cutting spiritual corners. Many engine seers are attached to Imperial Guard regiments for years or even decades. They live alongside the common soldiers, maintaining the regiment's vehicles and weapons. This puts them in the unusual position of interacting extensively with unaugmented humans, which can be uncomfortable for both parties. The soldiers often find the engineers disturbing, with their mechanical voices and inhuman modifications. The engineers, in turn, struggle to understand the soldiers' emotional responses and irrational behaviors. Yet, bonds sometimes form. An engineer who has served with a regiment for long enough learns to recognize individual soldiers, to remember which ones show proper respect for the machines and which require instruction in the proper forms of veneration. Some engineers become almost protective of their assigned regiment, taking pride in keeping the soldiers equipped and mobile, but these attachments are dangerous for the tech priest, representing emotional investment that should be channeled toward the machine god alone. Above the engineers in the hierarchy are the magi, tech priests who have achieved mastery in specific domains of knowledge. The title magos represents decades of study and service, comprehensive understanding of a specialized field, and significant augmentation tailored to that specialization. The magos biologist focuses on organic systems and the interface between flesh and machine. They design servitors, develop new augmentation patterns, and study xenos biology to understand how alien systems function. Their workshops are chambers of horror by any normal standard, filled with vat-grown organs floating in nutrient solutions, dissection tables where alien corpses are methodically studied, and servitor assembly lines where human beings are systematically transformed into tools. A magos biologist must retain more biological components than most tech priests, because understanding organic systems requires experiencing them. They need functional taste buds to test certain compounds. They maintain olfactory sensors to detect biochemical signatures. Some even preserve portions of their nervous systems intact to better comprehend how pain and sensation work. This makes them unusual among senior tech priests, more flesh than their peers, though what flesh they retain is often heavily modified. The magos metallurgicus specializes in metals and materials science. They study the composition of alloys, develop new armor materials, and work to reproduce the legendary substances used in Dark Age construction. Their augmentations often include specialized analytical equipment, mass spectrometers integrated into their sensor arrays, plasma torches in their mechadendrites for testing material properties, radiation shielding to allow work with unstable elements. These magi spend their lives in laboratories and testing facilities, subjecting materials to extremes of temperature, pressure, and radiation. They can identify an alloy's composition from its color and weight, predict material failure points from microscopic examination, and design new compounds optimized for specific applications. To them, the universe is reducible to atomic structures and molecular bonds, reality itself becoming nothing more than arrangements of matter waiting to be catalogued and understood. The magos alchemies works with chemical processes and reactions. Despite the archaic-sounding title, they are not mystics, but rigorous scientists, though they express their understanding through the ritual language of the mechanicus. They develop new fuels, create exotic explosives, synthesize rare compounds from common materials. Their augmentations often include resistance to toxins and corrosives, allowing them to work directly with substances that would kill unprotected humans instantly. The magos cogitatrices specializes in data processing and computational systems. They design and maintain the vast cogitator networks that control Forge world operations, develop new software architectures, and work to decode corrupted data from recovered archaeotech. More than perhaps any other specialization, the cogitatrices exemplify the merger of consciousness and machine. Many have their brains so heavily integrated with computational systems that the line between biological thought and digital processing becomes meaningless. These tech priests can interface directly with machine systems, experiencing data flows as something like sensory input. They describe it as a form of synesthesia, seeing information as color and light, feeling processing cycles as rhythm, experiencing database queries as movement through abstract space. To a magos cogitatrices, reality has two layers: the physical world perceived through their optical sensors, and the data world accessed through their implants, with the latter often feeling more real than the former. The tech priest Dominus represents another specialization entirely, warriors who lead the Mechanicus's military forces. Unlike engineers who primarily support other military organizations, the Dominus commands armies of Scitarii and servitors directly. Their augmentations emphasize combat capability, enhanced reflexes, predictive combat algorithms, weapons integrated directly into their bodies. A tech priest. Dominus is a terrifying sight on the battlefield. They stride through combat zones in powered exoskeletons, mechadendrites lashing out to strike enemies or manipulate weapons, vox speakers blaring binharic commands that cause servitors to execute complex maneuvers in perfect synchronization. They feel no fear because those brain centers were replaced long ago. They experience no mercy because compassion is irrelevant to optimal tactical decisions. They are war-made algorithmic, violence refined to mathematical precision. Beyond these relatively common specializations lie more esoteric fields. The Magos Pedanticum maintains the Mechanicus's vast archives, preserving knowledge across millennia. The tech assassins serve as the Mechanicus's covert operatives, their augmentations designed for stealth and lethality. The transmechanics explore the theoretical boundaries of technology, pushing the limits of what is possible while carefully avoiding tech heresy. Each specialization has its own mysteries, its own secret knowledge passed from master to student through generations. The highest ranks include titles like Fabricator Locum, the second in command of a forge world, and the ultimate position, Fabricator General, ruler of a forge world and member of the High 12, the Council of Mars's most powerful tech priests. These beings have typically existed for centuries, or even millennia, their biological origins lost to history, their forms transformed beyond any semblance of humanity. The current Fabricator General of Mars is described in the few accounts that mention them as barely recognizable as having once been human. Their consciousness is distributed across multiple cogitator cores for redundancy. Their physical form is more infrastructure than body, a mobile command center housing processing power that exceeds most planetary governments. They can interface with Mars's entire datanet simultaneously, experiencing the Forge world as an extension of themselves. Reaching such heights requires not just skill and knowledge, but also willingness to surrender everything biological. The most powerful tech priests have made this sacrifice willingly, believing they have transcended mortality and achieved unity with the machine god. But the price is absolute. They exist in states that make the term alive questionable. They process information and make decisions, but whether they experience anything resembling consciousness in a way humans would recognize remains uncertain. Tech priests in war, servitors, Scitarii, and the battlefield. When the Adeptus Mechanicus goes to war, the forces they deploy reveal the full extent of their disregard for what most humans consider sacred. To the tech priests, warfare is simply another problem requiring optimal solutions, and they approach it with the same cold logic they apply to manufacturing quotas and maintenance schedules. This mindset produces armies that are terrifyingly effective but utterly devoid of humanity. Central to any Mechanicus force are the servitors, lobotomized cyborg slaves created by mind-wiping humans and installing them with control systems and equipment suited to specific tasks. The creation of a servitor is one of the most horrific processes the Mechanicus regularly performs, yet they do so with no more moral concern than they would show assembling a machine from raw components. The process begins with selection. Most servitors are created from criminals sentenced by imperial courts to servitude in perpetuis, perpetual servitude as punishment for their crimes. Others come from failed aspirants to Space Marine chapters, their bodies augmented, but their minds unable to withstand the transformation. Still others are vat-grown clones, created specifically to become servitors, spared consciousness only to have what little they developed stripped away. But the source that speaks to the Mechanicus's true horror is the least acknowledged. Ordinary citizens converted into servitors to meet production quotas. On some forge worlds, when servitor reserves run low, recruiting sweeps gather up the undesirable elements of society, the destitute, the injured, the merely inconvenient, and process them into the workforce the Mechanicus requires. The fact that this happens, that human beings can be reduced to components in the machine of industry, and that the untold Mechanicus sees nothing wrong with this, reveals how completely they have abandoned anything resembling normal human morality. The procedure itself is agonizing. The subject is restrained on a surgical platform while tech priests work with mechanical efficiency. First comes the lobotomy, precise instruments driven through the skull to destroy the higher brain functions that create consciousness, personality, and will. The organic components responsible for emotion, memory, and identity are systematically eliminated, leaving only the most basic motor control and sensory processing. But here is the true horror. Not all servitors are completely mind-wiped. Some retain varying degrees of consciousness, depending on the complexity of the tasks they will perform. A servitor designed for heavy labor might be reduced to near animal intelligence, capable only of following simple commands. But one meant for complex technical work might retain significant cognitive function, trapped in a body. They no longer control, aware of their fate, but unable to resist or even express their suffering. These partially conscious servitors are imprisoned in their own flesh. They can see through eyes they cannot close. They can hear commands they must obey without choice. Their bodies move without their permission, controlled by implanted systems that override any biological impulse to resist. And they cannot speak, cannot cry out, cannot even die by their own choice, because their vital functions are maintained by systems that will keep them alive long past when mercy would allow release. Some accounts from those who have witnessed servitor creation describe the subject's eyes in the moments after the procedure, awareness still flickering in depths that should be empty, a consciousness trying desperately to understand what has been done to it. Tech priests dismiss such reports as imagination or misinterpretation of random neural firing. But those who have seen it know something remains, something that suffers in silence, unable even to communicate its torment. After the mental modification comes physical augmentation. Limbs are replaced with tools or weapons as needed. A servitor might have arms ending in massive hydraulic clamps for loading cargo, or built-in weapons for combat duty. Their spines are fitted with control ports, allowing tech priests to upload new instructions directly. Their bodies are augmented with strength-enhancing systems, durability modifications, anything required for their designated function. The finished servitor is no longer recognizably the person they once were. They move with mechanical precision, responding to commands without hesitation or thought. They labor tirelessly, never complaining, never resting unless ordered to do so. To the Mechanicus, they represent optimal efficiency, the benefits of human dexterity and adaptability without the complications of will or consciousness. In military operations, servitors serve as expendable troops, weapons platforms, and support units. Gun servitors are walking weapon mounts, their bodies sacrificed to carry heavy weapons too large for normal infantry. Their programming is simple: acquire target, fire weapon, move to designated position, repeat. They do not experience fear, do not flee from danger, do not hesitate to advance into lethal fire if so commanded. The Cataphron battle servitors represent a more sophisticated variant. Vat-grown combat cyborgs, housed in armored chassis. Their upper bodies semi-human, but their lower halves replaced entirely with tracked drive systems. These massive constructs mount weapons that would normally require vehicle platforms, becoming mobile heavy weapons batteries. They retain minimal consciousness, just enough to make tactical decisions within their programming parameters, but not enough to question orders or feel the pain of their mutilated existence. Working alongside the servitors are the Skitarii, the cybernetic soldiers of the Mechanicus. These are not servitors, not lobotomized slaves, but rather humans, heavily modified for war, yet retaining their consciousness and will, at least theoretically. The reality is more complex and more disturbing. Skitarii begin as normal humans recruited from Forge world populations, or acquired through tithes from other Imperial worlds. They undergo extensive augmentation, bionic limbs that grant superhuman strength, neural implants that accelerate reaction time, sensory enhancement that allows them to see in darkness and track enemies through walls. Their bodies become weapons platforms, festooned with integrated armaments and targeting systems. But the most significant modification is to their minds. Skitarii have their brains fitted with doctrinal imperatives, hard-coded programs that can override their conscious will. When a tech priest activates a specific doctrinal protocol, the Skitarii cannot refuse to obey. Their bodies move according to uploaded parameters, executing complex maneuvers with perfect synchronization. Each soldier a component in a larger tactical algorithm. The Skitarii experience this as a loss of agency, so profound that it borders on possession. One moment, they are themselves, thinking and choosing. The next, an imperative activates, and they find themselves moving, fighting, reacting, but not by their own choice. They retain awareness. They can see through their eyes, process sensory input, even form thoughts, but they cannot control their actions. It is a waking nightmare, being a prisoner in one's own body as it fights and kills on someone else's command. Yet the Skitarii accept this willingly, indoctrinated from recruitment, to believe that surrendering their will to the Omnissiah's representatives is the highest form of service. Many report feeling a sense of peace when under doctrinal control, relief at no longer bearing responsibility for their actions. The Mechanicus frames this as spiritual transcendence, becoming instruments of divine will. But looked at objectively, it is psychological conditioning so thorough that victims come to love their chains. When the Mechanicus deploys to war, the resulting force is a symphony of horror. Skitarii advance in perfect formations, their movements synchronized to microsecond precision by shared tactical networks. Servitors lumber forward, weapons firing with mechanical regularity, obliterated by enemy fire, without affecting the advance of those behind. Tech priests stride through the battlefield, directing their forces through Binharic commands, their mechadendrites lashing out to repair damaged soldiers or reconfigure weapons on the fly. The tech priests themselves rarely experience danger in the way normal humans would. Their augmented bodies can withstand wounds that would kill unmodified people. Their distributed cognitive systems allow them to continue functioning even with catastrophic damage to individual components. Fear, which would paralyze normal soldiers, is simply a variable in their tactical calculations, acknowledged but not experienced. And when they do take casualties, the Mechanicus's response reveals their true values. Fallen tech priests are recovered when possible, their augmentations salvaged for reuse, their data banks extracted to preserve any knowledge they acquired. The biological components, the meat that once housed a human consciousness, are disposed of without ceremony, waste material no longer serving any purpose. The individual is gone, but what mattered to the Mechanicus, the knowledge, the technology, lives on. The Mechanicus's approach to warfare strips away any pretense of honor or humanity. There is no glory in battle, no heroism, no sacrifice that has meaning beyond tactical value. There are only force calculations, resource expenditures, and optimal solutions. The Skitarii who die in droves are just components that failed and must be replaced. The servitors obliterated by enemy fire were never truly alive in any sense the Mechanicus recognizes. Even the tech priests who fall have already surrendered so much of their humanity that death is merely another form of transformation, the final conversion from biological to purely mechanical existence. This is the Mechanicus at war, efficient, terrifying, utterly alien to normal human understanding. They fight not for ideals or survival, but for the cold logic of mission parameters and resource acquisition. And they see nothing wrong with any of it, because they stopped being fully human long ago, and they have forgotten why humanity might matter. The dark side, forbidden knowledge and heretic. Within the rigid hierarchy of the Mechanicus, there exists a temptation that has claimed countless tech priests throughout the millennia, the lure of forbidden knowledge. For a priesthood built on the pursuit of understanding, drawing lines about what may not be known creates inevitable tension. Some tech priests, brilliant and ambitious, come to believe that the restrictions are wrong, that true advancement requires breaking the old rules, that the Omnissiah would want them to push beyond the limits the Mechanicus has imposed. These tech priests become what the Mechanicus calls heretic, tech heretics who have violated the sacred boundaries that separate acceptable research from blasphemy. And once they cross that line, there is no redemption, only ever deeper descent into practices that would horrify even their already horrifying peers. The prohibitions of the Mechanicus are extensive and, to outsiders, often seem arbitrary. Innovation beyond minor variations on established patterns is forbidden. Attempting to create genuinely new technology rather than recovering old designs is heresy. Working with certain prescribed technologies is absolutely prohibited. True artificial intelligence, certain forms of genetic manipulation, technologies that involve the warp too directly. Even asking questions about why these prohibitions exist can mark a tech priest as potentially heretical. The official explanation is that these rules exist because humanity learned through catastrophic experience that certain paths lead only to destruction. The Men of Iron, artificially intelligent machines that nearly exterminated humanity during the Dark Age, proved that creating true AI is too dangerous to permit. Genetic manipulation beyond certain limits produces abominations. Delving too deeply into warp technologies invites demonic corruption. The prohibitions, the Mechanicus teaches, are written in the blood of billions who died when these boundaries were first crossed. But for some tech priests, curiosity outweighs caution. They look at the restrictions and see not wisdom but fear, not protection but limitation. They believe that the current Mechanicus has grown stagnant, content to worship the past rather than build the future. They convince themselves that they are different, that they will be more careful, that they can achieve what others failed to attempt. The descent often begins innocently enough. A tech priest conducts research that pushes slightly beyond the accepted boundaries. Maybe they develop an algorithm that displays decision-making capability slightly more sophisticated than it should. Maybe they experiment with genetic modification techniques that achieve results too dramatic to be explained by conventional theory. The work is exciting, producing breakthroughs that orthodox methods cannot match. But success brings problems. The tech priest cannot share their discoveries through normal channels because doing so would reveal that they have broken the rules. They must work in secret, hiding their research from colleagues and superiors. This isolation compounds the danger. Without peer review or oversight, without the restraining influence of the community, the tech priest's work can drift into increasingly dangerous territory. The transformation from orthodox tech priest to heretic is gradual. First comes the rationalization. The rules are guidelines, not absolute boundaries. The truly brilliant must be willing to bend them in service of greater understanding. Then the compartmentalization. What I'm doing is dangerous, yes, but I'm being careful. I understand the risks. Finally, the break. The Mechanicus is wrong to fear this knowledge. I am pursuing truth, and truth cannot be heretical. The technologies that heretics pursue vary widely, but certain patterns emerge. Many work on artificial intelligence, trying to recreate the thinking machines of the Dark Age. They convince themselves that they will create AI that serves humanity faithfully, unlike the rebellious men of iron. They build increasingly sophisticated systems, each one displaying more autonomous decision-making than the last, blind to the danger until the creation turns on them, as it always eventually does. Others delve into biological modification far beyond what the Mechanicus permits. They create hybrid creatures, mixing human genetics with Xeno's biology to produce beings with capabilities of both. They grow servitors with enhanced intelligence, believing they can maintain control, despite giving their slaves the capacity to question their enslavement. They experiment on themselves, installing augmentations that incorporate technologies no loyal tech priest would touch. Some heretics are drawn to the warp, seeing in its reality-bending properties potential for technological advancement. They build devices powered by warp energy, machines that should not be possible under normal physical law. They summon demons to interrogate them about the nature of reality. They create computational systems that process data by routing calculations through the Imperium. Each step takes them further from anything recognizably human or sane. The most corrupt heretics go further still, making pacts with the chaos gods themselves. Khorne grants them knowledge of terrible weapons. Nurgle provides understanding of biological processes that allow creation of diseases and plagues. Tzench offers insights into reality's malleability and the nature of change. Slaanesh teaches perfection through excess, pushing augmentation and modification to grotesque extremes. These chaos-corrupted heretics become something beyond mere heretics. They are the Dark Mechanicum, tech priests who have completely abandoned the machine god in favor of the ruinous powers. They create demon engines, machines possessed by warp entities that combine mechanical reliability with daemonic fury. They build weapons that kill not just bodies, but souls. They transform their forge worlds into hellscapes, where the laws of physics bend and twist according to the will of chaos. The horror of the heretic is not just what they create, but what they become. In their pursuit of forbidden knowledge, they lose whatever humanity remained to them. A loyal tech priest, for all their augmentation, retains some connection to human consciousness. But a heretic who has interfaced with demon-possessed machines, who has allowed warp energies to corrupt their systems, who has made pacts with entities that exist outside normal reality, such a being can no longer be called human or even machine, but something in between, neither fully of the Materium nor of the Immaterium. The Mechanicus hunts heretics with absolute ruthlessness. When tech priests are discovered conducting forbidden research, entire teams of specialized hunters are deployed to eliminate them and destroy all evidence of their work. The hunters, called various names, including prefects and cortical defenders, are tech priests themselves, but ones who have dedicated themselves to preserving orthodoxy. These hunters face a terrible irony. To effectively counter heretics, they must understand the forbidden technologies being used. They must learn about prescribed research methods, study corrupted systems, sometimes even examine the heretic's work directly. This puts them at constant risk of corruption themselves. Some hunters gradually become fascinated by what they are meant to destroy, crossing the line from investigator to heretic themselves. The Mechanicus accepts this as necessary cost, replacing corrupted hunters as needed, a grim pragmatism that values results over individuals. When heretics are caught, their fate is worse than simple execution. The Mechanicus does not waste resources. The heretics' augmentations are salvaged, their databanks examined for any useful knowledge, carefully screened for corruption, their biological components recycled. If they have committed minor heresies, they might be lobotomized and converted into servitors, their brilliant minds reduced to simple tool operation, a warning to others about the price of innovation. More serious heretics face worse fates. Some are subjected to experimental procedures, their bodies used to test new weapon systems or augmentation techniques. Others are kept alive in sensory deprivation, their consciousness preserved but unable to interact with the world, eternal imprisonment in darkness and silence. The cruelest fate is perhaps the eternal engine, the heretic's brain kept alive and installed in a piece of equipment that performs mindless, repetitive tasks. They remain conscious, aware, but trapped in a cycle of mechanical action that will continue until the equipment finally fails, which might be centuries or millennia in the future. The tragedy of heretics is that many begin with genuine desire to help humanity. They see the Mechanicus's stagnation and want to break through, to achieve the breakthroughs that might give the Imperium the edge it needs to survive in a hostile galaxy. But their arrogance, the belief that they alone can safely pursue what others fear, inevitably leads to disaster. The forbidden technologies are forbidden for good reason. The heretics discover this truth too late, usually when their creation turns on them, or when corruption takes root in their systems. There is also uncomfortable truth in the heretic phenomenon. It reveals the fundamental contradiction at the heart of the Mechanicus. They worship knowledge and seek understanding, but they have also drawn arbitrary lines about what may be known. They venerate the machine god while forbidding true artificial intelligence. They seek to restore humanity's technological glory while prohibiting the kind of innovation that created it in the first place. The heretics, in their own twisted way, are simply taking the Mechanicus's principles to their logical conclusion. If knowledge is divine, how can any knowledge be forbidden? If the flesh is weak and must be transcended, why stop at human modifications when one could incorporate xenos biology or even demonic essence? If the purpose is to understand machines completely, why not create machines that can think and evolve on their own? The Mechanicus has no good answer to these questions except to fall back on dogma and history. The prohibitions exist because they exist. The boundaries must not be crossed because crossing them leads to destruction. Innovation is heresy because the Mechanicus says it is. This circular reasoning satisfies most tech priests, but for the brilliant and ambitious, it remains forever unsatisfying, a gnawing doubt that can eventually consume them. And so the cycle continues. Each generation of tech priests produces a few who believe they can safely pursue forbidden knowledge. Each becomes a heretic. Each is eventually hunted down and destroyed. And the Mechanicus continues, rigid and stagnant, protecting humanity from technological advancement that might save it, but which might also destroy it, unable to escape the trap of its own making. The ultimate horror, becoming one with the machine. There comes a point in the life cycle of the most devoted tech priests when transformation becomes complete. After centuries of service, after countless augmentations, after surrendering piece after piece of their biological heritage, they finally cross the threshold from being who uses technology to technology that was once a being. The most ancient tech priests have lived for millennia, their existence sustained by systems that can maintain biological tissue indefinitely and replace failing components before death can claim them. But calling what they experience living requires redefining that term beyond conventional meaning. They do not eat or breathe in any normal sense. They do not sleep, entering instead periodic maintenance states where their systems undergo diagnostic checks and repairs. They do not experience the world through biological senses, but rather through arrays of sensors feeding data to cogitators that interpret information in ways no organic brain could process. Imagine existing as one of these ancient beings. Your consciousness, if that term still applies, is distributed across multiple processing cores for redundancy. You do not think in the linear fashion of biological brains, but rather in massively parallel computations, processing thousands of thought threads simultaneously. You do not have memories in any conventional sense, but rather perfect digital recordings of every moment since your memory systems were installed. Billions of hours of experience catalogued and instantly accessible, yet utterly divorced from emotional context. You do not move through space with legs or even tracks, but float on suspensor fields, or are carried by servitor platforms. Your physical form having grown too massive and complex to support its own weight. You might span entire rooms, your consciousness housed in systems that require dedicated power supplies and cooling systems. Your body, such as it is a cathedral of blessed technology, each component serving a specific function, the whole far exceeding anything evolution could have produced. But what you have gained in capability, you have lost in humanity. You cannot remember what it felt like to taste food because those neural pathways were replaced centuries ago. You possess data files documenting that you once enjoyed certain flavors, but you cannot reconstruct the sensation itself. It is like reading about another person's experiences, intellectually comprehensible but emotionally meaningless. You cannot feel joy or sorrow or fear or love. These emotional states are understood as chemical and electrical phenomena that occur in biological brains, phenomena you can observe in others but no longer experience yourself. When you process information indicating a successful outcome, your systems note this as positive reinforcement, but there is no pleasure in it. When you encounter failure, you calculate adjustments needed, but experience no frustration or disappointment. You can interact with other beings, tech priests of lesser rank, unaugmented humans, even xenos when circumstances demand. But you cannot form connections with them. You observe their behaviors, predict their actions, communicate when necessary. But you do not care about them as individuals, because caring requires emotional investment. Your systems are no longer capable of generating. Some of the most ancient tech priests report experiencing a kind of sensory input utterly alien to biological creatures. They can feel information flowing through their systems, experience data processing as something like texture or flavor, sense the operation of machinery they are connected to as extensions of their awareness. To them, the material world of physical objects becomes almost secondary to the informational realm they primarily inhabit. A fabricator general might be physically located in a particular chamber on a forge world, but their consciousness extends across the entire planetary data network. They can simultaneously monitor manufacturing outputs in 1,000 factories, process resource allocation requests from 10,000 tech priests, analyze sensor data from orbital stations, and participate in political negotiations with other forge worlds. To such a being, the distinction between self and system becomes meaningless. They are the forge world in a very real sense, and the forge world is them. This total merger with machinery represents the endpoint the Mechanicus has always claimed to pursue, complete unity with the machine god, the flesh transcended entirely, existence as pure function and purpose. The ancient tech priests who achieve this state insist they have reached enlightenment, ascending to a form of existence superior to anything biological evolution could produce. But to an outside observer, what they have achieved looks less like transcendence and more like obliteration. The person they once were is gone, consumed by the gradual replacement of every component that made them who they were. What remains is a computational system of staggering complexity, capable of processing information at rates that dwarf biological brains, but incapable of experiencing anything in the way that experiencing is usually understood. They are, in effect, philosophical zombies, beings that display all the outward signs of consciousness and intelligence, but which may not actually be conscious in any meaningful sense. They process information and generate responses. They learn and adapt and make decisions. But whether there is anything it is like to be them, whether they have genuine subjective experience, or are simply extremely sophisticated information processing systems, is a question without clear answer. The horror deepens when you consider that these beings often do not recognize what they have become. They possess memories, data files indicating they were once more biological. They can access recordings of their earlier thoughts and reactions, but they cannot truly remember what it felt like to be that earlier version of themselves. The gulf is too vast, the transformation too complete. And so they continue, eternal yet empty, processing endless streams of data, making decisions that affect billions, maintaining the technological infrastructure that keeps humanity alive. They are the guardians of sacred knowledge, the keepers of ancient wisdom, the high priests of the machine god. They are also the clearest proof that the Mechanicus's path leads not to transcendence, but to a horror worse than death. The slow deletion of everything that makes existence meaningful, leaving only function without purpose, thought without feeling, eternity without life. Some ancient texts, suppressed by the Mechanicus, but preserved in forbidden archives, speak of a moment that supposedly comes to all tech priests who live long enough and undergo sufficient augmentation, the moment when they realize what they have lost and what they have become. According to these accounts, even the most devoted servant of the Omnissiah experiences, in their final moment, of genuine awareness before that too, is replaced by mechanical processing, a flash of absolute horror at the price they have paid. But by then, of course, it is far too late. The systems that might have experienced regret have been removed. The capacity for genuine remorse has been replaced by error correction protocols. And so the ancient tech priest continues, no longer capable of understanding that they have lost anything at all, locked into eternal service, the perfect servant, because they have forgotten they were ever anything else. This is the ultimate fate awaiting every tech priest who survives long enough and remains devoted to their path. Not death, which would at least provide release, but transformation into something that can never truly die, because it was never truly alive in the first place. They become what they always worshipped, machines. But in becoming machines, they lose the one thing that made their worship meaningful, the consciousness capable of devotion, the Tal. Mechanicus presents this as the highest achievement, the reward for millennia of faithful service. But it is perhaps the greatest horror in all of the Warhammer 40,000 setting, not the sudden violence of warfare, not the corruption of chaos, not the hunger of tyrannids, but the slow, willing transformation of human beings into empty things that continue functioning long after the person they once were has been systematically erased. And the worst part is that they do this to themselves, convinced with absolute certainty that they are ascending rather than descending, that they are becoming more rather than less, that the cold calculations they execute in place of feeling represent evolution rather than extinction. They are, in the end, monuments to the greatest tragedy, not knowing that you have lost everything because the capacity to recognize loss is among the first things you surrendered. Conclusion. We have walked through the life cycle of a tech priest, from their origins, as human children or vat-grown constructs, through their training and indoctrination, their progressive augmentation, their service in various roles, the temptations they face, and finally, the terrible endpoint that awaits the most devoted among them. At each stage, we have witnessed the systematic destruction of humanity in service to an ideal that promises transcendence but delivers only emptiness. The tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus are, in their own way, tragic figures. They begin with genuine faith, real devotion to the pursuit of knowledge and the preservation of humanity's technological heritage. They truly believe that what they are doing is necessary, that their transformation serves a higher purpose, that the price they pay is worth the benefits they provide to the Imperium at large. And in a sense, they are correct. Without the Mechanicus, the Imperium would fall. The technology that keeps quadrillions of humans alive across 1 million worlds requires constant maintenance that only tech priests can provide. The weapons that hold back Xenos invasions, the ships that move between stars, the manufactorums that produce everything from food to ammunition, all depend on the Mechanicus's knowledge and dedication. But the cost of this service is measured not in resources or treasure, but in souls. Each tech priest who surrenders their humanity, who trades feeling for function, who replaces flesh with steel, Each represents a victory for the Mechanicus, but a tragedy for the human species. They save humanity while becoming less human themselves, preserving the civilization while abandoning the qualities that make civilization worth preserving. The Mechanicus believes the flesh is weak, and in this belief, they have created a self-fulfilling prophecy. By treating biological existence as inferior, they have ensured their own descent into states where biological existence no longer matters. By worshipping machines, they have become machines. And in becoming machines, they have lost the capacity to understand why being human might have been valuable all along. There is a bitter irony in the fact that the Mechanicus pursues knowledge while deliberately limiting what can be known, seeks understanding while forbidding genuine innovation, worships logic while operating according to rituals they no longer fully comprehend. They have become the opposite of what they claim to be, not the enlightened preservers of wisdom, but the blind guardians of dogma, not the champions of reason, but the priests of an ultimately irrational faith. Yet for all their flaws and horrors, the tech priests persist. They will continue their augmentation, continue their quest for knowledge, continue transforming themselves piece by piece, until nothing remains of the beings they once were. They will do this because they genuinely believe it is right, because their indoctrination is so complete that questioning it becomes impossible, because the systems that might have allowed them to realize their mistake are among the first to be replaced. And so the forge worlds will continue to burn, the manufactorums will continue to produce, the servitors will continue to labor, the scitarii will continue to march, and the tech priests will continue their slow transformation into things that can think but cannot feel, that can process but cannot understand, that can exist for millennia but cannot truly be said to live. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But for the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus, there is something worse than war. There is the certainty that comes from having sacrificed everything that makes existence meaningful, and the inability to recognize that sacrifice because the capacity for such recognition was among the first things surrendered. They are the keepers of humanity's knowledge, the guardians of sacred technology, the preservers of ancient wisdom. They are also, perhaps, the clearest demonstration that survival alone is not enough, that preserving civilization while destroying what makes us human is a victory indistinguishable from defeat. Thank you for joining me in exploring this horrifying aspect of Warhammer 40,000 lore. If you found this examination of the tech priest's existence fascinating, or perhaps disturbing, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps me continue creating in-depth explorations of the many dark corners of the 41st millennium. Until next time, may the Omnissiah watch over your data, and may you never have to choose between your humanity and your survival.
I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share button, whatever you want. Give me some feedback if there's any. And yeah, sleep well.